Okay, so on your driving test, when the examiner wants you to do demonstrate the parallel park, first thing they'll ask you to do is pull up on the left-hand side a good way back from a specific car. So let's take this yellow car, checking my mirrors, signalling, and we're pulling up on the left-hand side a good way back from that yellow car. And then the instruction the examiner will give you, they'll ask you to pull up alongside, in this case, the yellow car, reverse back and park behind it, and they will ask you to finish your manoeuvre reasonably close and reasonably parallel to the curb line, and attempting to complete the manoeuvre within about 2 car lengths, and to begin when it is safe to do so. Now the key thing to remember here, before you jump your head ahead to the parallel park manoeuvre, got to remember is the first manoeuvre we're about to do, as we've done many times before on a driving test, is to move off from a left-hand curb. So it's essential we do our full observations before moving the car off. And the other thing, the instruction is to obviously do it when it is safe to do so, and also with due courtesy to other road users. So we wouldn't pull out if there was any other car obviously just about to come past us. We wouldn't obstruct them. However, once we are committed to the manoeuvre, we then have to manage any traffic that does appear. So with that in mind, we'll start by preparing our car, doing our full 6-point observations, being comfortable there is nobody around, and then we're going to immediately pull up alongside the yellow car. Now we don't want to be clattering wing mirrors, and this is quite a nice wide road, but on a narrower road you do need to be reasonably close to that car. I'm going to put a left hand signal on and select reverse gear. First thing we're going to do then is reverse the car back until the head restraints have gone beyond the back of the car. We then wind on 1 turn of left lock, keep the steering wheel straight. I can see there is a car behind me and they're waiting for me. We reverse the car around now to a 45-degree angle, and at which point we rotate the steering wheel 1 turn of left. So our wheels are now straight. We're heading for the curb line. So I'm looking in my left-hand door mirror for my reference point. And when I reach that reference point, I wind on full right lock, constantly keeping an eye on the silver car, which is very courteously waiting for me on this occasion. So we'll complete our manoeuvre there, straightening the steering wheel, putting the brake on, taking the car out of gear, and the silver car is coming through. There's actually a crow sitting right in the middle of the road, which is obstructing the silver car's progress. That's what it's waiting for, but we'll give them a big thank you for being courteous and waiting. And if we have a little look out of our side window and down at the curb line there, or in the mirror perhaps, you can see that we have finished reasonably close and reasonably parallel to the curb, and we are within 2 car lengths of the yellow car. So that is the parallel park. The crucial thing then to remember, because the next instruction the examiner is going to give you, is when it is safe to do so, move off and follow the road ahead, or follow the sat-nav's instructions. And at that point, once again, it's don't breathe a sigh of relief and completely forget your safety crucial observations. So here, to complete the manoeuvre and our move off, we will once again prepare our car, do full 6-point observations, consider a signal, and in this case we're going to reconsider because there is a car coming, so we're going to pause. And there's a car coming from both the front and behind, so we're going to pause. And again, it becomes crucially important after that pause that we redo our full 6-point observations, consider a signal, and there is a road user there that could benefit from a signal, so I'm going to put one on before moving off. Okay, so we've now switched to a head camera to give us a point of view perspective, and I'm hoping this won't become too Blair Witch Project in the cinematography, but it will hopefully show my head movements. So the first thing we're going to be asked to do is pull up on the left, so I'm checking the left-hand mirror, popping a left-hand signal on, and pulling up on the left a good way back from the yellow car, as we did last time, gently bringing the car to a stop. And then the instruction will be when it is safe to do so, to pull up alongside the yellow vehicle, reverse back and to park behind it, finishing reasonably close, reasonably parallel to the curb, and completing the manoeuvre within about 2 car lengths. So with that in mind, we're preparing the car. We're starting our cursory observations. We can see that silver car passing us by, and that's now gone. And now we do our full 6-point checks. And I concluded it is safe to move off and there is nobody to signal for. So the first thing is to pull up alongside the yellow car, reasonably close to it without clattering door mirrors. And then immediately select reverse gear. So we're showing white reversing lights. We look all around. And then we reverse back and we're looking at our rear head restraint, and that becomes our reference. And when that goes beyond the yellow car, we have another good look round and we rotate the steering wheel 1 turn to the left. Checking, so our nose of the car is about to swing out, so we check that area and then we check back to the pavement area. Once we get around to about a 45-degree angle to the curb line, we then rotate the steering wheel 1 turn to the right. So our car wheels are now straight, checking all round. And now I'm heading into the curb line and I'm looking in that left-hand mirror. And the reference point on this car is the left door handle gets reasonably close to the curb line, which it is now. Checking all round because I can see another car coming, and having got to my reference point, I've rotated the steering wheel fully to the right. I'm just going to pause there because the silver car is oncoming, as we can see, so I'm just going to pause for them. They were a good distance away, but on a narrower road it would certainly have been prudent to pause. Now I'm reasonably parallel to the curb, and if we look in the fisheye mirror there, you can see I'm a nice distance just inside the drain grid width from the curb. So now I will straighten my steering wheel. It's preferable to do that when the car is moving just slightly to avoid dry steering, which I've just done there. We then secure the car with the parking brake, take it out of gear, and await the examiner's next instruction. And that instruction will be, when it is safe to do so, move off and follow the road ahead. And the clue in that is when it is safe to do so. And the only way we are able to know when it is safe to do so is if we have done our 6-point observations. So once again, don't forget that. Don't breathe your sigh of relief and think I've done the parallel park, because it's not over until we move off safely. So with that in mind, 6-point observations. Aware of the car coming from the front, checking over my shoulder. They've now gone. So we can now move off safely. New road, new mirrors. Okay, so we're just going to do a bit of a static briefing now to recap what we've been looking at in terms of the reverse parking manoeuvre, or the parallel park manoeuvre that is required for the DVSA driving test, the L-Test. And just to be clear, this video is all about effectively the test technique that is required for the basic driving test. So if you're looking for a video on how to get into the smallest possible parking space, this isn't the video for you. So this is very much a driving test technique. And so just to put that into context, on your driving test day, the examiner is not going to be looking for you to get it into an extremely small space. All they're looking for you to demonstrate is you've got the fundamental skills, the car control skills and the observation skills, and the spatial awareness skills to perform this technique to a basic level. And then once you've been awarded your license, you can go away and practice independently and finesse your technique and work on getting it into smaller spaces. So if we have a look at the DVSA's official guide, Driving the Essential Skills, reverse parking is covered in detail on pages 242, 243. There are a couple of key lines from that. It says you can start practicing using only one parked car, and then when you've mastered this technique, you can progress to parking between 2 cars. So for the purposes of the driving test, you will be doing the technique against a single car. But so let's just put that into a bit of context for you. So, and where the reverse parking technique sits with other roadside parking techniques we may use during our driving test. So During your driving test, on a number of occasions, you'll be repeatedly asked to identify somewhere that is safe, convenient and legal to pull the car up on the left-hand side. And so using the MS-PSL system, having identified the gap, you will then carefully drive the car curbside and stop the car. And that is by far and away the simplest and safest way to park roadside. So driving forward, best observations, easiest steering technique, and so wherever possible that's the technique we would use, and that's why it has such an emphasis placed on it in the driving test. The reverse parking technique, the parallel park, is for situations when it's not possible to do that because our space is constrained, typically by other parked cars or other obstructions that mean that we haven't got a large amount of space. So as we are then coming along the road, key thing to remember is that it's the front wheels on our car that do the steering. So if we're coming along the road and we steer the front of our car into the space, the challenge we have is then we can't go far enough forward to bring the back of the car in. So by reversing the back of the car in first, so the non-steered wheels, we get that into the space first, our front wheels which do the steering can then be rotated to bring the car back in. So that's the principle of the technique and why we would use it. Though clearly it's more complex than just pulling up simply at the roadside driving forward in. So as I say, the technique is designed to get into smaller spaces and as a guide to what is a sensible space to attempt to get into, the basic guide would be that whatever the length of your car, you should allow one car length and another half of your car. So 1.5 times your car length would be the minimum sensible gap to attempt to get into. And this then gives you margin each side. So again, if you try and compress yourselves into a very small gap, you may get it in, you may damage cars on the way in. And equally, when the person, if we all crunch up very tight, when this person comes back their car and tries to get out, they're going to have problems and potentially do expensive damage to your bumpers in the process. So a sensible gap is generally referred to as 1.5 times the length of your own car. Though for the purposes of the driving test, you're not going to be asked to get it into a space at all. You are going to be asked to perform the technique against a single car. And so this influences the method we will use. But they do put an imaginary backstop in, so the examiner is going to ask you to complete the manoeuvre within about 2 car lengths. So if we just mark that. So there will be an imaginary backstop beyond which you cannot go, but the examiner has given you actually a very generous gap. And so for the purposes of this exercise, we are going to use the benefit of that additional space and approach the technique accordingly, with the objective of being to pass your test successfully on first attempt. And then as I say, once you have your license, you can go away independently and practice and finesse your technique into smaller spaces. Okay, so if you web search parallel parking, you'll get an array of videos and techniques described, all claiming to be the best, the ultimate guide to parallel parking. And in reality, they will all be variations on a theme, because parallel parking is governed by geometry. It's a factor of steering angles and a given space. So we're, the mathematics of geometry will define what the steering angle needs to be given the size of the space we're trying to get into. And that has been exploited, so that section of mathematics, geometry, has been exploited by car manufacturers in the design of new car and new car technology. So the mathematicians have combined with car engineers and the software engineers to create cars with sensors that will then rotate the steering wheel automatically for you. So you come along and the sensors would detect the space, and then the car will automatically rotate its steering wheel to get you into that space. So I'll put some links in the description so you can have a look at that technology and how it works, and that just brings a little bit more computer precision to the process that we're trying to undertake as human beings. And the bit that we introduce as human beings is the element of human error. We all vary in our spatial awareness and our ability to see reference points, and so the technique we try to describe keeps fixed amounts of steering lock and makes it quite formulaic to try and remove those elements of human error which we all introduce into our parallel parks. And it also, as I say, in the context of what we're doing today for the driving test, we use the full space available to us to minimize the risks of, if we do make an error, a little bit of test nerves going on, if we make a human error, we can extract ourselves from that situation quite easily by having given ourselves some additional space. So we'll now have a look at that in a bit more detail. Okay, so on your driving test, the examiner will give you the instruction and ask you to pull in on the left hand side, as they will have done on many previous occasions during the course of the test. But the clue will be, they'll be quite prescriptive, and they'll say, can you pull in on the left hand side a good way back from, in this case, the silver car? And that's your clue that they're going to ask you to do the reverse manoeuvre or the parallel park. So using the normal system of car control, we pull in on the left a good way back from the target car. And then the examiner will give the instruction that when it's safe to do so, they would like you to pull up alongside the silver car and reverse back to park behind it, finishing reasonably close and reasonably parallel to the curb and within about 2 car lengths. So approximately two car lengths, somewhere about there. Now, reasonably close, just as a guide, if we look at the drain grids, so the drainage drain grids, the width of one of those is sort of the outer extent of where you want your car to be. So somewhere between the outside edge of that and the curb line would be a nice place to be, without bashing into the curb, rubbing wheels and tyres on the curb, which can cause dangerous damage to both your wheels and tyres. So that's what we're looking to achieve. So the first thing we do, when it's safe to do so, and we've done full observations and there's nobody immediately obvious that we're going to get in the way of, first thing to do would be to pull the car alongside the car we're going to park behind. So just put it alongside there. Now, we want to be reasonably close to the car. So as a guide, we don't want to be clattering our wing mirrors and doing damage to the car. And also, as we pull up alongside it, we've got to be mindful that there could be somebody in that car about to open a door. So we want to approach it cautiously. But we do want to be reasonably close, particularly if it's a narrow road or is obstructed, a wide road that's obstructed in any way, because what we've got to remember is the bonnet of our car will be turning out, so we need some space to do that. So we do want to be reasonably close to the car. And then the first thing we're going to do, having looked all around, is to select reverse gear. So we're immediately showing reverse lights to the back of the car, and that's our signal phase. So we've checked our mirrors and done our observations, put our signal on with reversing lights. If any car is coming from the front, it may be also beneficial to put a left-hand signal on, just again to communicate our intentions. And then the first thing we're going to do is reverse our car straight back. Having checked all around, good observation, reverse it back. And this is where the Essential Skills gives us some guidance on this. It says your vehicle should be about level with or slightly ahead of the parked vehicle. And this will depend, as it says, on the size of gap you're trying to get into. So if we were trying to get into a particularly small gap, 1.5 car lengths, we would finish level with the target car. However, given that we have this generous 2 car length gap for the purposes of the test manoeuvre, we are going to position our car slightly ahead of the target car. And the reference I use to in the videos, I say when the head restraints of the rear seats have gone beyond it, that's the time to pause. And the reason we're talking about the head restraints is on this type of car, the back seat, the upright of the back seat and the head restraint will effectively be roughly in line with our rear tyres. Okay, and in a reverse manoeuvre, the rear tyre is the pivot point. So in this case, on this side, the pivot point around which the car will turn. So by positioning it just beyond the target car, we give ourselves, as we'll come on to see later, some wriggle room in the event of us getting our other reference points a little bit wrong. So we've got a contingency plan built in immediately. So we are in that's our first position. So we stop the car there. Now what we want to do, as we said, is to rotate the car to a 45-degree angle. And so we aren't going to be getting, it's not an exacting science, we're not going to be getting our protractor out. It is a reasonably rough guide, but if protractors don't work for you, if you imagine a clock face, if you're looking out of the front windscreen of your car, if that was 12 o'clock, and you turn your head through 90 degrees and look out the driver's door window, that would be 3 o'clock. And so somewhere in between those points will be about about 130. So the 130 position on the clock face would equate to roughly a 45-degree angle. So whichever way works for you. But that's, say, it's not an exacting science, but that's broadly where we would like it to be. So to achieve that, this is where our steering comes in. So at the moment, the steering wheel will be facing straight ahead and our steering wheels will be straight. So we want to rotate the steering wheel in the direction we want the back of the car to go. So we want it to go left towards the curb. So we are going to rotate the steering wheel one turn of left rotation. So one complete turn, one pull, one push, 360 degrees. And as you'll see on my training car, I've got a little bit of electrician's tape at the 12 o'clock marker. So when that red mark comes all the way around and is back at the top, that's one rotation of left steering lock. And what that will do is turn our steering wheels from straight ahead position round to the left. Having done full observations, we then slowly reverse the car around until it achieves that 45-degree angle, or the half past one position, in relation to the curb. So just to turn that around so you can see that. So we have pivoted around the back tyre. So we were in this position here. We've pivoted around the back tyre to about a 45-degree angle to the curb line. So the next thing we want to do is bring that back tyre is our focal point, everything is operating around that back tyre. We want to bring that back tyre close to the curb, but not too close. If we remember, the drainage grid width is what we're aiming for. So our wheels are currently round here to the left, and we did achieve that by turning one whole turn of the steering wheel. So to get them back to the straight ahead position, we need to unwind the left lock. So we are going to put one rotation of right steering on. So again, it will be right steering, so one pull, one push, 360 degrees, and the red marker comes back to the 12 o'clock position. We then check all around, and very, very carefully we then reverse the car in towards the curb line. And at this point, as described in the video, we're then looking for a reference point on our car, which we will have predefined, which tells us when this rear tyre is getting close to, but not too close to, the curb line. And at that point, we then want the front of the car, so our wheels are currently straight ahead, we want the front of the car to now swing into this space here. So we need to rotate our wheels fully to the right. And in this case, in this situation, we don't just wind on one turn of steering lock, we wind the steering to its maximum, so full lock, so which in my car would be 1.25 turns. So we wind it fully to the right with our pull push steering, check all around, and then slowly the nose of the car will come in. And if we've got our reference points correct, we will be reasonably close and reasonably parallel to the curb line. At that point, our wheels are still at an extreme angle, pointing outwards, so it'd be sticking out beyond the body of the car. It'd be a nuisance to any passing cyclists. And it's also crucially important if we're going to leave, if we are going to park the car and leave it, we could jump back in and then not know where our wheels were. So when we complete any parking manoeuvre, we leave the wheels in the straight ahead position. So in this case, we would then need to apply some left steering lock to unwind the wheels to the straight ahead position. So that's the final sequence, and so this technique is often referred to as left, right, right, left, and people have various ways of remembering it: Lionel Richie, Richie Lionel, or whatever form of words help you to remember left, right, right, left. So that is the technique in summary. Just to explain, we talked about moving the car beyond the back of the parked car, and the reason for that, let's say we turned it around to our 45-degree angle and we started coming back in, and let's say with a little bit of test nerves we misjudged the point at which to stop, so we got our rear tyre just a little bit too close to the curb line. Now, because we've come further back, we now have the option of taking first gear, winding full left steering lock on, and driving the car into our space. Whereas in contrast, if we'd started just level with the silver car, and we started our turn there and we got misjudged it slightly, we are then stuck. There is no option, and it becomes much more difficult to extract yourself from that situation. So to be clear, for test day, we keep it nice and simple. We give ourselves a margin of wriggle room. Hopefully we won't need it if we can be accurate, but it just makes everything easy for driving test day. Okay, so just a couple of other things to point out. As we said, the examiner will give you a generous 2 car length backstop within which to complete your manoeuvre, but you must remember that the location could be either an uphill or a downhill gradient, so you must have the car control skills to be able to handle those situations. And the other thing, as the essential skills points out, it says to remember that while you're carrying out this manoeuvre, you could be a hazard to other road users. So it's crucially important, and what the examiner will be looking for is your all-round observation skills, and that you're aware of other road users around you, how they're behaving, and you take that into your driving plan. So as we said, before setting off, we try and pick a moment when there are no other cars visible to us, but in busy environments it won't be very long before someone else arrives on the scene potentially. So this is where our signalling is crucial, so taking reverse gear promptly and reinforcing that with an indicator signal is very important. So we've communicated and we've got brake lights on, so for the cars behind we're telling them what we're doing. From cars approaching from this direction, clearly our left-hand indicator and our positioning in the road would be a clue of what our intentions. So when these cars come into view, have a look at what their drivers are doing. Now some people will pause quite courteously and wait for us. Others may look to come on past. And you know, in narrow streets you may get people coming from this direction actually pushing past, mounting pavements to get through and doing all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff. Now whatever another motorist does, we can't point to that as an excuse for unsafe behaviour on our part. So for example, let's say this motorist was squeezing through, it's a narrow road, they've mounted the curb to come through. That's all well and good, as long as you have paused your manoeuvre and let them carry on and get past. What isn't acceptable, if they're coming through in close proximity to us, you're looking completely the other way and you start reversing the nose of your car out, creating a potentially dangerous situation. So if anyone is trying to move past you, you should pause within reasonable proximity. You should pause the manoeuvre. Similarly, if we have any pedestrians or anyone entering the immediate area where you are reversing your car, you should again pause the manoeuvre until they have cleared that area. And it is a balancing act, so let's be clear. It's in the examiner will want you to get on with it, get on and complete your manoeuvre. So there is some judgment. So if the pedestrians are 50 meters down the road, then they're not an immediate, we're no immediate hazard to them. Once they enter the immediate zone when we're reversing, then we are potentially a hazard to them. So it's just understanding that, say looking to carry on with the manoeuvre and until the point where they are absolutely in the zone where we should be protecting them. So we'll go straight into the manoeuvre. Our intention is to parallel park on this silver car. Now clearly there's plenty of space there to drive into it, but for the purposes of demonstration we're checking our mirrors and pulling up alongside it carefully, just checking there is no driver in it who's going to open the door. But we're reasonably close to it, not clattering wing mirrors, but just close enough. Immediately I'm now taking reverse gear. Quick glance all round, full observations, looking to the pavement area, and then my reference point is the rear head restraint, which is roughly in line, the back seats are roughly in line with our rear wheel, which becomes our pivot point, and I've just positioned that just beyond the silver car. At this point we now take one full turn of left steering rotation, look all around and carefully move the car around until we get to approximately a 45-degree angle with the curb, or about 1:30 on a clock face. At this point, with the car just slightly moving, we rotate the steering wheel all the way back to the right, so our driven steering wheels are now straight and we're heading straight for the curb line. Checking all round, effective observations. My next reference point I'm checking for is to get the rear wheel close to the curb line. And on this car, as a reference point, when we look in that fisheye mirror, when the back of that driver's door handle gets close to the curb line as it is now, that's our reference point. So at that point I rotate the steering wheel fully to the right, checking all around. But then if you look in the fisheye mirror again, you'll see that the car is coming round and we are reasonably close to the curb but not hitting it. look ahead now, and we can see we're straight with the car ahead. So we rotate our steering wheel. We've got a car coming down our outside, which we need to be aware of, and I'll pause for it. We'd actually completed our manoeuvre there, so we're going to put the parking brake on and end the manoeuvre. So we're reasonably close, reasonably parallel to the curb line, within 2 car lengths of the silver car, but an easy distance to drive out. We're not so close to the silver car ahead that it would make it difficult for us to move off. Now, before we move off, really important, we do 6-point observations. And on this occasion, as you can see, first we've got a car coming ahead, but we've also got a pedestrian who is now in my blind spot. So if I turn my head now, you can just see the pedestrian. So that highlights why it is so crucial to do that over-shoulder check. Now, we've paused for the pedestrian in the oncoming car, so it's essential that we now redo our observations, full 6-point observations, right over that shoulder, looking down the road, final shoulder check before moving on. Okay, so a key reference point for your parallel park is to understand when the back tyre of your own car is close but not too close to the curb. And initially that will be just a little bit of trial and error, and identifying then what you can see in the left-hand mirror. So when I say trial and error, we don't really want to be bashing the wheels and tyres into the curb and learning that way, because that can cause dangerous damage to the wheel and tyre. But so the best thing to do is get up and find a quiet space, quiet time in the morning, and reverse your car in nice and slowly, get somebody to help you and guide you and stop you when your tyre is close to the curb line, but not too close. And then once you're in that position, have a look in the left-hand mirror and see what you can see. So just to demonstrate that now, we'll do the parallel park and we'll get to the 45-degree position. So first thing we're going to do, having done our observations, we're going to pull up alongside our target car, nice and straight, as you remember. So the steering wheel is straight, we're taking reverse gear. I'm reversing it back, having checked all round until my head restraints have gone beyond the bonnet of the target car. I'm rotating the steering wheel 1 turn of left, and now you'll see the bonnet of the car is coming around. Until we get to approximately a 45-degree angle, or if it's a clock face, if 12 o'clock is straight ahead, 3 o'clock is out there, we want to get to about 1:30 on the clock face. At this point, we are going to turn 1 steering lock to the right to straighten our wheels, and now we're heading back into the curb line. And so if we now look in our left-hand mirror and in the fisheye mirror, and you may like to add some fisheye mirrors to your own car just to help you see right down to the curb line. As you can see, as we're coming in closer, the back of my driver's door handle is now appears to be just close to, but not quite touching, the curb line, and that's the reference for this car. So at this point, I then wind on full right steering lock, and if we watch very slowly, the car then comes round nice and close, but not touching the curb line. Now we're nice and parallel, we straighten our steering, put the parking brake on. So as I say, that's something you've got to establish, and every car will be slightly different, and what you can see in the mirror will vary. Fisheye, convex fisheye mirrors are available on all sort of leading online retailers, and they just stick on with the double-sided sticky foam that comes on those mirrors, and so it may help you. Some more modern cars, when you take reverse gear, the electric mirror will automatically tilt down to help you see the curb line, but if you haven't got that technology, then fish eyes are about a £5 and are very helpful. Okay, so once you've learnt the basic technique, there is then no substitute for repetition, 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 and keep practicing it until it becomes second nature to you. So we're just going to go straight into the technique. This time we're not going to pull up on the left, so I'm checking my mirrors, totally clear behind, so I'm going to pull up alongside this car. We are on a slight incline this time, so again, approaching with caution in case the door were to open. We're not clattering wing mirrors. So that's our first position. Immediately we're taking reverse gear to show white lights to any cars that are behind. It's currently clear. Checking all round, before starting to reverse the car. My first reference is to get my rear head restraint a little way beyond the car, because that's where my rear wheels will be, and that's what I'm going to pivot around. Have a good look around, and then I'm taking one left turn of steering while keeping the car just moving nice and slowly on clutch control. Looking all around until the car is at about a 45-degree angle to the curb line. I then rotate the steering wheel one turn back to the right, being aware of the car that's approaching from the front. I'm putting a signal on for their benefit. They seem to be holding for me. I'm now looking in my left-hand mirror to find my reference point for the curb line, and again being aware of the white car that's just coming from behind as I come in nice and cautiously, and pause as the white car comes past. Now I'm just going to straighten my car slightly, giving thanks to the black car that waited for me, and gently finish the manoeuvre. So checking our mirrors, we're clear behind, and as we can see, we've got another immediate opportunity to practice the parallel park. So I'm going to pull up alongside this silver car. Again, approaching cautiously, just checking that there's nobody in the car who's likely to open the door as we pull up alongside. Immediately selecting reverse gear, having a quick but effective look all around. Reversing the car now until my rear head restraint goes just beyond the back of the car. Look all around again, and then get the car moving slowly as we take one turn of the left. Checking my right hand mirror, we can just see a car emerging, so I'm putting a signal on for them. Keeping the car moving, we now are at a 45-degree angle. We rotate the steering wheel back, keep an eye on that white car. We're now looking to our left hand door mirror. I'm just going to pause for the white car to go past. And then we look in our left hand mirror. Our door handle is our reference point as being close to the curb line. So checking all around, we very cautiously bring the car around. Stop when we become straight, and again we will just straighten up the steering. It's preferable to do that, as we said, when the car is moving, but we then secure car with the parking brake, take it out of gear. So once again, we're going to move off from static. So we prepare the car into first gear, check all around our 6-point observations. Maybe in this case to benefit from a signal. And off we go. At the end of the road, we're going to turn left. So another immediate opportunity. So pull up alongside, take reverse gear. Full and effective observations. Head restraints beyond our target car. Checking around again as we rotate the steering wheel one turn to the left. Checking the right hand mirror and all around as we bring the car to a 45-degree angle, and then rotate the steering wheel one turn to the right. So our wheels, our driven wheels, are going pointing straight, so we're heading for the curb. Looking at that left-hand door mirror, whilst still checking all around, and there's our reference point. So my door handle in this particular car is our reference point. That's getting close to the curb line, so I'm now winding on full right lock, and under full control and constantly looking around, I'm bringing the car round, straightening the wheel, securing with the parking brake, taking it out of gear. And as you can see in the fisheye mirror there, we're just at the sort of drainage grid width from the curb line. So the next instruction is, when it's safe to do so, to move off. So again, we prepare the car and we remember full over shoulder to the pavement, passenger door mirror, center mirror as I also look ahead, right hand mirror, and finally over the shoulder for those driveways. And as we can see in the mirror, we've got a blue car coming, so we're going to pause there. We'll then repeat our observations, just And this time there is nobody coming and no one to benefit from a signal, so I will move off safely. So that blue car illustrated, perfect timing to illustrate why it's so important to do those observations before moving the car off. Had we not made that check, it would clearly have been dangerous. We could have potentially pulled out into the path of that blue car, and it's for that reason that the examiner will fail you your driving test if you forget to do those checks.